If I were to tell you that horseshoe crabs, which are creatures that have been around for more than 450 million years, are today worth millions of dollars for their eggs, what would you think? It is true that these ancient sea species are at the center of a harvesting operation that is both immensely lucrative and controversial. On the other hand, here's the catch. Their eggs are being collected not only for the sake of research, but also for something even more shocking: medicine that can save lives. The harvesting of horseshoe crabs is a multi-million-dollar industry. Yet, with such high stakes, the question arises as to whether or not it is sustainable, or whether or not we are putting these ancient creatures in danger. Let's take a deep dive into the topic of horseshoe crab fertilization, which is both contentious and dramatic. It is with great pleasure that I introduce you to the horseshoe crab harvest, which is one of the most contentious and lucrative industries that you have probably never heard of. Despite the fact that these intriguing creatures could appear to be relics from another era, they are actually at the center of a global industry that is worth millions of dollars. Even more astonishing is the fact that their eggs are an essential component in the field of medical science. The Limulus amoebocyte lysate test is an essential procedure that is used to determine whether or not a horseshoe crab has been fertilized. Horseshoe crabs are harvested for their eggs, which are used to aid in the process of fertilization. The purpose of this test is to identify bacterial endotoxins that may be present in medical devices and vaccinations. These endotoxins can be found in items ranging from surgical tools to vaccines that can save lives. It is essential for human health that the process be carried out. But at what expense to the population of horseshoe crabs? Due to the fact that their eggs are a significant source of nutrition for a great number of migratory birds, horseshoe crabs are an important component of the marine ecosystem in their natural state. The harvesting of horseshoe crabs, on the other hand, has become a big problem as the demand for their eggs continues to increase. However, the harvest is not only utilized in the pharmaceutical business, it is also utilized in the field of scientific study, and even serves as bait for industrial fishing operations. One thing that is shocking is the method that is used to capture horseshoe crabs. Crabs are trapped, their eggs are retrieved, and then, in many instances, the crabs are released back into the wild. This process is a delicate and frequently dangerous technique that involves the capturing of crabs. However, a significant number of horseshoe crabs do not make it through the ordeal, and their populations are decreasing in certain regions. It is just as spectacular to watch the horseshoe crab fertilization process really take place. Outside of the crab, the eggs are fertilized, collected, and then utilized in a variety of enterprises that are dependent on the biochemical qualities of the eggs obtained. However, is this approach sustainable, or are we taking too much from these animals that millions of years ago lived? Considering the ever-increasing demand for their eggs, the harvest of horseshoe crabs may never be able to be considered completely sustainable. Things are about to become really contentious at this point. The populations of horseshoe crabs are facing significant dangers as the world continues to rely on these animals for the purpose of conducting medical tests. The harvesting of horseshoe crabs is not simply a matter of collecting a few eggs. Rather, it is an invasive and disruptive operation that significantly affects the survival of these crabs over the long run. In the first place, the crabs are typically gathered during their breeding seasons, which is the time of year when they are at their most vulnerable. The process of gathering includes a number of discrete processes that are quite sensitive. The crabs are then released back into the wild after having their blood taken, their eggs extracted, and finally they are bled for their blood. This process, however, has the potential to be lethal for horseshoe crabs. It is common for them to become weaker and unable to procreate as a result of the psychological and physical toll that the extraction causes. Not only does the horseshoe crab harvest line involve the collection of eggs, but it also involves putting the very existence of a whole species in jeopardy on the line. According to a number of studies, horseshoe crabs are susceptible to experiencing significant fatality rates after having their blood extracted through a bleed. This is especially concerning when one considers the fact that the population of these species is already decreasing as a result of the destruction of their habitat, the effects of climate change, and excessive collection for the purpose of egg fertilization and bait. Despite the fact that conservationists have been raising concerns about the long-term viability of the horseshoe crab harvest for many years, the industry continues to expand. Here's yet another unexpected turn of events. In spite of the fact that the LAL test, which is performed on horseshoe crabs, offers numerous medicinal benefits, other methods for evaluating endotoxins are already in the process of being developed. On the other hand, the horseshoe crab harvest continues to be carried out, since the conventional approach is still considered to be more dependable and economical. Should we continue to rely on this antiquated method, or is it time to make investments in alternatives that are more environmentally friendly and compassion-oriented? However, the horseshoe crab fertilization technique does have a role in the field of medical science. However, it does not come without any drawbacks. It is true that horseshoe crabs have been utilized in research for decades. Nonetheless, a significant number of specialists contend that the volume of the horseshoe crab harvest is not consistent with sustainable practices. Due to the development of new technology, it is possible that we are on the verge of a breakthrough that will completely eliminate the requirement for horseshoe crabs to be used in testing. However, it is also possible that we are too dependent on their eggs to ever go back. At this point, let's take a more in-depth look at the advantages and disadvantages that are involved with the harvest of horseshoe crabs. The eggs of these ancient creatures are not merely a byproduct, rather, they are at the heart of a multi-billion-dollar enterprise that has an impact on millions of individuals all over the international community. On the bright side, the collection of horseshoe crabs results in the production of medical items that can save lives. When testing medical equipment, vaccinations, and intravenous fluids, the LAL test is an extremely important test. In the absence of this test, the safety of a significant number of the medical items on which we rely would be in question. The pharmaceutical business is extremely reliant on horseshoe crabs because of the level of accuracy and dependability that this technology possesses, which makes it a vital tool for ensuring the health of the general public. Nevertheless, the dangers associated with this procedure must be disregarded. It has already been demonstrated that the harvesting of horseshoe crabs places a significant amount of stress on wild populations. It is common for the trauma of being bled for their blood, along with the physical toll of having their eggs taken, to result in long-term health problems or even death. When horseshoe crabs are released back into the wild after being harvested, a significant number of them do not survive, which raises concerns about the industry's capacity to remain profitable in the long run. In addition, the ever-increasing demand for horseshoe crabs is one of the factors that is leading to the significant decrease in their population. In many areas, populations are already at a low level, and conservationists are warning that excessive harvesting could result in the extinction of certain species. The move to these new technologies is lengthy, and until then, the demand for horseshoe crabs will continue to be high. While there are efforts being made to find substitutes to horseshoe crab blood, the transition occurs slowly. Other aspects of the horseshoe crab fertilization process have also been subjected to examination. Some people believe that the practice is no longer relevant, and that it ought to be replaced by synthetic or alternative ways that do not involve the use of animals in any way. However, these alternatives are still in the process of being developed, and for the time being, the harvesting of horseshoe crabs continues to be the most practical choice. The most important question that needs to be answered is whether or not the collection of horseshoe crabs can be considered sustainable. The hazards connected with overharvesting and the possible loss of these ancient species are substantial, despite the fact that there are significant benefits associated with each of these activities. One must strike a delicate balance between the needs of humans and the preservation of the environment. Is it possible that we will be able to find a means to maintain the harvest while simultaneously preventing the extinction of horseshoe crabs? The harvesting of horseshoe crabs is a multi-million-dollar industry that plays an important part in the provision of medical care on a global scale. Yet, it also raises substantial ethical and environmental standards of concern. As we have seen, the process of fertilization with horseshoe crabs carries with it a significant amount of risks in addition to its enormous rewards. We are still left with the dilemma of whether or not we can continue to rely on these animals for medical testing, or whether or not it is time to discover alternatives that are more sustainable and humane. The future of the horseshoe crab is something that is now up in the air. Do you have any thoughts? In the comments section below, please share your opinions and participate in the conversation. When it comes to the harvest of horseshoe crabs, what are your thoughts? Will the potential benefits outweigh the potential risks, or should we look into other options? Feel free to leave your ideas in the comments section, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to receive additional information regarding the world of horseshoe crabs, the process of harvesting, and the fertilization of eggs.